Hello and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. Relationships have the power to wound us and the power to heal us. As a clinical psychologist, author, and professor at Northwestern University, I've devoted my life to studying intimate partnerships and family dynamics. On Reimagining Love, I'm here to translate complex clinical topics into tools and takeaways that you can use in your relationships today. If you're ready to develop relational self-awareness and create vibrant and loving relationships with the people who matter most to you, you've come to the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. Hey there, welcome back to Reimagining Love. I am grateful to be here with you today for the second part of our exploration of repair. Last month, I did an episode that was called Why Can't I Get Over It? And in that episode, I talked about a number of factors that might be blocking someone from being able to move on from a betrayal or from a relational rupture of some kind. Today's episode is called When Shame Blocks Repair, and it's all about what might be keeping someone from offering a heartfelt apology after doing relational harm. And I'll tell you what, this series is tricky. It's tricky to create and it's tricky to listen to, but that's okay. We are here for the sticky and necessary exploration, aren't we? And this series really challenges us to make use of the golden equation of love, one of the foundational principles of relational self-awareness. The golden equation of love is my stuff plus your stuff equals our stuff. And obviously, a huge part of what can get in the way of healing from relational harm is the our stuff part. Relational harm harms the relationship. Trust is compromised. Emotional safety is compromised. And a lot of the healing work is relational healing work, us work. The person who did harm must be willing to be honest and accountable and witnessing and validating and patient and contrite and apologetic. The person who's been harmed must be willing to step bit by bit, baby toe by baby toe, into grace and forgiveness and risk and vulnerability. The couple needs conversations that are about accountability and witnessing, as well as conversations that are about how the hell did we get here, as well as conversations about where do we go from here. And that relational work is key. But it is also key that both partners understand and tend to all of what's getting stirred up inside of each of them. The hurt partner stuff plus the hurtful partner stuff equals the relationship stuff. In the Why Can't I Get Over It episode, I pointed our lens toward the person who'd been harmed. And I was focusing on what might be blocking forgiveness inside of them. That episode was about the hurt partner stuff. Okay, well, I told you I'd be back. And today I'm flipping the lens and I'm delving into the hurtful partner stuff. The question we're working with here is when you have hurt someone you love, what is it that gets kicked up inside of you that keeps you from stepping into an effective repair process with the person that you hurt? And the hypothesis that I want you to sit with is that 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, it's shame that blocks repair. But shame is a tricky emotion. It can be hard to identify. And even if you can identify it, it can be hard to figure out what to do with it, how to work with it inside of you. And this episode is designed to give you a roadmap. First, we're going to define the emotion and explore how we react to it and why. Second, we're going to talk about how shame might evoke other emotions like anger and defensiveness that then block our ability to be in a compassionate and regulated dialogue with the person that we've hurt. Third, we're going to explore a path through shame by employing gentle, compassionate, empowering strategies for owning our harmful behavior, shifting out of that cycle that leads us to sometimes double down and triple down on hurt and helps us positively move forward away from shame. And then fourth, we're going to explore how to make a heartfelt apology that centers your partner's experience. Okay, a few notes up top. You know I love my caveats. Number one, similar to last month's episode, I'm going to frame our conversation around the idea of harm and betrayal within an intimate relationship. But the principles that I'm talking through here can absolutely be applied to any of your relationships, relationship with friends, with family, wherever a rift has occurred. Okay, number two, for ease and clarity, I'm going to use the terms the harmful partner and the hurt partner. Please remember that you are more than your harmful behavior. Your partner is more than the hurt they are experiencing in the wake of your harmful behavior. Three, even though I am delineating the harmful partner and the hurt partner, so often we experience ourselves as both in the very same incident. Sometimes the conflict gets stuck in that awful place about whose hurt is bigger or who harmed whom more. If that's where you and your partner are getting stuck, I hope that you two can sort of like pair this episode in last month's episode in a way that helps you take turns bearing witness to each other's hurt in the service of moving forward. And then fourth, in order to support you on your journey, I made a companion worksheet for this series on repair. And so if you're a newsletter subscriber, you're going to find it over the next few weeks in the weekly Tuesday newsletter, or you can head to dralexandrasolomon.com/repair. And you can access the worksheet there. The worksheet includes some pieces from the Why Can't I Get Over It episode and some pieces from today's When Shame Blocks Repair episode. It packs quite a wallop. Okay, so what is shame? Therapists have been talking about shame and working with shame for decades, but it is Queen Brené Brown who really took shame out from behind therapists' office doors and helped all of us more deeply understand the power of shame, the impact of shame. Brené defines shame as, quote, the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. We feel like something we've experienced, done, or failed to do makes us unworthy of connection, end quote. What I've always loved about her definition, and frankly, all of her work on shame, is the validation that experiences of shame are part of being human, and our work is not to avoid or squash shame, but rather to learn how to notice when it's rising up and to learn how to work with it effectively. I also have always loved how Brené's definition reminds us that our tendencies towards shame are rooted in our desire for connection. We feel shame precisely because connection matters. The love of others reinforces our sense of worthiness, and therefore our fear of losing connection with others primes us for all kinds of painful emotions, including shame. Shame is relational because connection matters to us. But shame is also relational because the experience of shame affects our relationships. We cannot be in shame and in connection. Shame's like this hall of mirrors. When we're in shame, we get really self-focused and not in a self-care kind of a way. More like self-focused in a I suck, I'm broken, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy kind of a way. That's what shame sounds like. The felt sense of shame is like a pit in the stomach or a flush in the cheeks. Shame looks like slumped shoulders, a downward gaze, and avoiding eye contact. I was looking at a 2021 meta-analytic review in the European Journal of Psychology. And they looked across many studies and found a really strong connection between chronic and repeated experiences of shame and poor self-esteem. Other research that I found that was cited in a 2019 Scientific American article found a really clear connection between shame and depression. Shame affects our sense of self. So what causes shame? There's a psychotherapist named Joseph Burgo, and he wrote a book about shame. And he talked about how there are 4 categories, like 4 big kind of buckets that tend to trigger shame. See what you notice when I talk you through these 4 buckets. Bucket number 1, unrequited love. I like them and they don't like me back. That's often a catalyst for shame. Number 2, exclusion. I want to be with them and they don't want to be with me. Number 3, unwanted exposure. People found out about something or saw something that I didn't want anyone to see or anyone to know. Number 4 is disappointed expectations. I wanted something to happen and it didn't happen. What I notice when I hear these 4 buckets or look at these 4 buckets is that shame is rooted in exclusion. It's rooted in disappointment, which makes sense, like sort of intuitively, as well as from an evolutionary perspective. This fear of exclusion is rooted very deeply in us. It's about more than our emotions. It's about our survival. Humans have historically depended on communities, on collaboration to thrive as a species. And even if today we're not hunting and gathering anymore, belonging is a very critical part in our ability to succeed and our ability to provide for ourselves. And because of that, we're constantly scanning for evidence that we're at risk of losing an important connection. And as an adult, your intimate relationship is likely one of, if not the, most central relationships in your life. It's at the very heart of how you organize your life, how you make the choices you make, how you define yourself, perhaps. So an FGO in this relationship feels really high stakes. If you are new to my work, you may not have heard that term before, FGO. You're never is a strong word, but you really are never going to hear me using the word mistake. It's just not a word in my vocabulary. I like to say instead an FGO, an effing growth opportunity. Mistake has this good, bad, right, wrong connotation that tends to end up limiting exploration, curiosity, learning. It's like, it's a mistake, put a stamp on it as a mistake and put it aside and move on. Whereas an FGO, in addition to being just, a little cheeky and fun, conveys a kind of self-compassion. And it opens up the possibility, or it reminds us that in every slip up and every FGO, there's a possibility for growth, even growth in these things that we wish hadn't happened, that we wish we hadn't done, that we regret doing, that we're experiencing shame about. Growth is always available to us. So that's why I say FGO. Anyways, an FGO within your intimate relationship is particularly high stakes. It's scary. It's threatening, not only because you have hurt someone that you care about, but also because you've put your own sense of emotional safety and belonging into jeopardy. The 2 other sources of shame that Joseph Burgo highlighted are also activated here: the unwanted exposure, the disappointed expectations. So perhaps in this experience of relational harm that you're thinking about today as we go through this episode, there might be for you a kind of unwanted exposure on a part of yourself that you don't like, whatever part of you led you to do this painful action, or potentially unwanted exposure because maybe your partner has or is threatening to tell people about what you did. So there again, you're ripe for shame. And finally, you also are probably feeling the sense of disappointment in yourself. You fail to meet your own expectations or to live up to your own values or how you believe you ought to be acting in your relationship. So ripe for shame. Hurting, deceiving, betraying your partner sets you up for shame. So we now know what shame is. I've made the case for you that shame is a very understandable response to being called out on your less than fantastic behavior. Here's the problem. A lot of times, the partner who has done harm does not name or identify or feel in touch with their shame. They're behaving from a place of shame rather than sitting in and being with the feeling of shame. It's like the shame is there. The shame is running the show, but The show is a collection of behaviors that are keeping the couple stuck and disconnected and that are leaving the hurt partner feeling alone and kind of like out in the cold. It's like the behavior is showing or demonstrating that something deeper is going on. And the something deeper is an experience of shame. And when we don't tend to the experience of shame, our behavior is the manifestation of shame. So I'm going to talk you through 3 behaviors, kind of 3 categories of behavior that tend to be on the scene and that tend to be clues that shame is running the show. So if you are not in touch with shame, you can thread your experience backwards from looking at your behavior to getting curious about the shame that's driving your behavior. Here's the 3 behaviors. Number 1, one behavioral response that you may have to having your harmful behavior pointed out to you is that you might fight back. You might minimize the other person's experience. Oh, come on. It's not that big of a deal. You're just being really sensitive. And yes, sometimes this combative, defensive posture is fueled by a bone deep sense of grandiosity, a certitude that we are the arbiter of appropriate emotional responses. But a lot of the time, this behavior, oh, come on, it's not a big deal, that behavior is a cover up for shame. It's the behavior we see. It's the behavior that's running the show when what's at the core, what's one layer underneath is shame. That need for deflecting back onto your partner, it's not a big deal. That need for deflection is in fact a reflection that something must feel pretty darn threatening to your sense of self. Your tendency, your behavior of rolling your eyes, of saying it's not a big deal, that deflection is a reflection that something feels unsafe inside of you. You're not paying attention to something inside of you. Hint, hint, it's shame. The problem, of course, is that as you point the finger at your partner with this kind of like fight response, this fight back defensive response, as you do that, you and your partner are going to stay stuck because you cannot get to repair until and unless the two of you can create a shared narrative of what happened. And even if you don't agree 100% on every detail, so long as you are saying this was not a problematic thing that I did, and so long as your partner is saying, yes, it was, yes, it was, yes, it was, there is no pathway to repair. Spoiler alert, one of the hallmarks of a healthy relationship is that when one partner says, ouch, this thing you did, this thing you said hurt me, the other partner says, uh-oh, tell me more, help me understand. That's a hallmark of a healthy relationship. Okay, so defensiveness or fighting back is usually fueled by shame, and defensiveness or fighting back blocks repair. Behavioral response number 2. Another behavioral response to being confronted by your less than awesome actions is to flee or to freeze. You walk away, you stop responding, you give one-word answers. What might feel conscious for you in that moment is, my partner's acting crazy, or this is ridiculous, or I cannot handle this. But again, if you slowed down and tuned in, I suspect you might start to get in touch with some feelings of shame. Your freeze or your flight is a defense against the discomfort. Shame is not a comfortable emotion to sit with. So freezing or fleeing, getting out of there, walking away, shutting down, those are ways that you are protecting yourself from the discomfort of the shame. It's you escaping a situation that is feeling intolerable. Remember how shame is that downcast glaze and the intolerability of making eye contact. That urge to get out of there is fueled by shame. And if you are not there, you cannot repair. So escaping and avoiding, fueled by shame, blocks repair. Number 3, the third kind of like behavioral response. So number 3, another direction that you might go when your partner wants to talk about your harmful behavior is that you might fawn. You might say things like, "You're right. I'm wrong. I'm terrible. I suck. You should leave me. You should break up with me." Sometimes this is like a little bit of like a pseudo fawn with like an air of sarcasm or an air of contempt. But sometimes it really is authentic and desperate. Like, "I suck. You should leave me. I'm not worth being in this relationship." And of the three avenues, the kind of defensive fight response or the flight freeze response, this fawn response, kind of feels like it's the most obviously about shame, because shame says, "I suck. I'm not worthy of love." And here's the thing, this fawning response that's fueled by shame, it also blocks repair. Why? Because all eyes are on you, your stuckness, your worthlessness. Your experience is being centered, not your partner's experience. What tends to happen when a harmful partner dissolves into the shame puddle is that the hurt partner then has to abandon their hurt in order to save you from your shame, in order to kind of pick you up out of your shame puddle. In a moment when they need your care, your shame has the power to flip the script and enlist them to care for you. When one Mr. Todd Solomon listens to this episode, this third avenue, this like fawn, this "I suck" avenue is going to sound very familiar to him. There have been many times when my shame has blocked our ability to repair. And when that happens, it usually plays out in this way. I get so lost in my narrative about my suckiness that his hurt gets drowned out. And I really have had to learn how to work with my shame so that I can stay present, bear witness, and be available for repair. So bottom line is that if we do not notice and name and work with our shame, it will take the helm and it will wreak havoc on us, on our partner, and on the relationship. Okay, at this point in our episode, I'm going to assume that I have at least some buy-in on your part and that we can move on to talking about how you can disentangle yourself enough from your shame that you can be present for repair. But in case you're having a hard time leaning in because you're saying to yourself, "If Dr. Alexandra knew how difficult my partner was, she would see that it's my partner stuff that's blocking repair, not mine." And so to that, I say, 1, your partner may very well be difficult. It is for sure hard to stay open with a hurt partner who's coming in hot, who's critical, who's enlisting other people in the drama. Number 2, the only person you can be in charge of is you. And by being steadily and gently committed to being in charge of you, that's you taking responsibility for your part of the equation. Number 3, again, I hope that your partner has or will listen to the "Why Can't I Get Over It" episode. This episode is going to offer them tools for more deeply understanding themselves. It's often the case that staying stuck in the drama and the attack and the hurt feels safer than stepping into vulnerability, stepping into micro risks of trusting you again. Forgiveness is an active process and it's scary. And so my wish is that you can have compassion for their fear of trusting again, their fear of letting go of the grudge, their fear of leveling the relational playing field, so to speak. I hope that you can have compassion and patience with that process while also wanting them to be active participants in unsticking themselves, because you can't get them unstuck. They have to get themselves unstuck. You could be patient, but they've got to also do their part of the work. And then number 4, you get to have boundaries. If they're behaving in ways that are hostile, that are escalated, you get to ask for a pause and you get to step away. That's different than fleeing. That's different than abandoning. That's you saying, "I love us too much to continue this way." That's you saying, "I am here for dialogue, but letting myself be your sort of emotional punching bag does not do either of us any good." Okay. So let's talk about moving from shame to guilt. I'm going to talk you through some strategies, and they're all designed to help you do one thing: move from shame to guilt. Here's why. 2023 research that was published in the European Journal of Traumatology explored the difference between shame and guilt. And this was the sample of people who were experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder. But the research confirmed something that has been found again and again. Shame is an emotion of collapse, whereas guilt is an emotion of activation and motivation. These researchers describe that shame is an internalizing activation. The arrows are going inward. The focus is on self-identity perception. Shame is associated with self-surrender, with feelings of unworthiness, with a lack of control, with helplessness, with despair, with a desire to escape and a desire to disappear. These researchers contrasted shame with guilt. Guilt creates an externalizing activation. The arrows are pointing from the self outward. Guilt leads us to want to do something. The focus is on self-behavior versus self-identity. Guilt creates an experience of self-negotiation, like negotiating within yourself. What did I do and what can I do to make it better? When we are in guilt, we experience a kind of tension versus unworthiness. We experience feelings of agency versus helplessness. We want to attempt to regain control, and we experience a desire to make amends. I want to very briefly run this contrast between shame and guilt through a somatic or a polyvagal lens. And if this language is new to you, I cannot recommend highly enough the work of Deb Dana. She's an excellent teacher. I'm dying to have her on the show. I'm going to have her on soon. I put some links to her work in the show notes for you so you can check her out and learn from her and all of her wisdom. So polyvagal theory teaches us to imagine in our minds a ladder that has 3 rungs. The top rung of the ladder is called ventral. The middle rung of the ladder is called sympathetic. The bottom rung of the ladder is called dorsal. These are 3 states of being, 3 states that our nervous system can be operating from. Ventral, top rung, is hopefully you right now, calm, regulated, kind of in your body, at peace. I'm okay. You're okay. The world is at least a relatively safe place. Sympathetic, middle rung of the ladder, is a state of activation. It's an uh-oh, something's not right. There's a threat and I need to do something about that threat. Dorsal, bottom rung of the ladder, is a state of collapse. Something isn't right. There's a threat, but I'm trapped. I can't do anything about it. It's sort of like a play dead response, a give up response. So as you hear me talk you through this ladder, I think you can imagine or anticipate where I'm going here. Shame is associated with being in the bottom rung of the ladder, being dorsal. There's a threat here, a threat to my ability to feel worthy, and I am helpless to do anything about it. Whereas guilt is associated with the state of being sympathetic, middle rung of the ladder. There's a threat here, a threat to my perception of myself, a threat to someone else's perception of me, a threat to this relationship that I hold so dear, and I have to do something about it. Guilt is about I did, shame is about I am. The reason that somatic clinicians use that image of the ladder is that when we get activated, we descend the ladder from ventral, present, to sympathetic, activated, got to do something, to dorsal, collapse. There's no point. We move down from calm to guilty, down from guilty to shameful. And for those of us who are prone to shame, we might not even notice that we even visited guilt on our way to collapsing into shame. But what this means is that in order to move from shame back up to calm and present and able to make an effective repair, we have to climb back up the ladder, up from shame to guilt, up from guilt to present. The climb from shame to okay passes through guilt. And that is a good thing Moving from shame to guilt is moving from passive to active. It's moving from stuck to unstuck. It's moving from disengaged to engaged. So guilt is fuel. So let's talk now about how to move from shame to guilt. I'm going to offer you 6 strategies. Number 1, scan for shame. Just notice the feeling. Turn your attention inward. Noticing is a huge step. One of my favorite James Baldwin quotes says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can change until it has been faced." Notice what shame feels like inside your body. It feels twisty. It feels like a punch in the gut. It feels like hot tears behind my eyes. It feels like a flash of anger. The cue that you are experiencing shame might be derived by noticing the behavior you're starting to move into. Are you becoming defensive? There's like a tightness in your chest, in your jaw. Your muscles are tensing. You want to push back against your partner. Are you retreating? You feel your partner's voice becoming distant. You want to run and hide. Okay, so notice and just try to give voice to the feelings. I'm feeling shame. Just that is powerful. I am feeling shame. This is making me feel awful about myself. I'm feeling judged. I'm feeling like I've let myself and everyone else down. Okay, number 2, listen to your shame. So notice your shame, listen to your shame. Ask yourself, what is my shame saying to me right now? What am I afraid is going to happen next? What does this moment remind me of? What do I believe to be true about myself right now? Let's imagine that while you're experiencing this shame, you write down what your shame is saying to you. I can't believe I did this. I'm always so careless and so selfish. I make everyone around me unhappy. So pause and look at that and what parts of the statement are rooted in something outside of you that you've taken in and taken on as your own. I'm always so careless and selfish. What's an earlier time that you believed yourself to be careless and selfish? I make everyone unhappy. Whose voice is this? What's the tie to your family of origin? Perhaps as children, we have no psychological boundary. We readily internalize our parents' emotions, our parents' words, our parents' experiences. When you were little, did you feel responsible for your parents' happiness? Were you given perhaps the direct message that your behavior was making your parents sad? Those are all the conditions for priming us for shame. Number 3, practice some self-compassion. This introspection, this noticing, this listening can start to put a little bit of space between you and your shame. Your shame is now conscious to you. You're aware that you are experiencing shame rather than just feeling like there's no space between you and this belief that you are all bad and all wrong. So from that place of a little more spaciousness, you can perhaps start to call up some self-compassion. And you probably have heard me talk in other episodes, but just a quick reminder of what self-compassion is. We get this from Dr. Kristen Neff, who is the primary researcher in the world of self-compassion. And she says, self-compassion is 3 things. It's mindfulness, present moment awareness, minus the story. I am tense. I am urgent. I am feeling shame. I'm feeling out of control. Number 2, common humanity. I am not the first or the last or the only person to experience what I am experiencing now. I am part of a collective of fellow imperfect human beings. I'm not alone. I am not less than. And number 3, self-talk. Talking to myself about this problem as if I am talking to a very dear friend. I behaved in a way that is not in keeping with the person I want to be. I'm only human. I can take steps to make it better. My actions created pain in someone I love, but I can show up fully in this moment. I am not perfect. I'm proud of myself for trying to do my best now. What I am feeling makes sense. A part of you might feel like you have to continue feeling shame because you have to keep beating yourself up because you feel like you deserve it because this thing you did is so beyond. You might feel like you have to keep feeling shame because your partner is hurting and therefore you should be hurting more. But ironically, or paradoxically, being kind to yourself here actually isn't selfish. The risk with feeling intense shame is that the shame leads you to center yourself. It keeps you stuck. It's that hall of mirrors. And so, in fact, your work to put some distance, your work to put some space between you and your shame is you working in the service of the relationship. Far from letting yourself off the hook, it is you working in service of the relationship. Okay. Strategy number 4 for moving from shame to guilt is to remind yourself of your wholeness. Remind yourself that you are more than your hurtful behavior. What's helpful here is to separate intent from impact. You probably have heard me talk about this before. Intent versus impact. Usually, because most of us are not sociopaths, certainly there are no Reimagining Love listeners who are sociopaths. Usually, because we are not sociopaths, we have benign intentions, even as our actions are harmful. And research by the Gottmans has found that hurt people don't tend to feel better when the hurtful person says, but you know I didn't mean to hurt you. So it doesn't work. The hurtful person, in an effort to kind of temper their own shame, might say to the hurt person, but you know I didn't mean it. But here's the problem. Benign intention does not override harmful impact. Gottman's research showed this. Even if you have benign intention, which you did most likely have benign intention, it doesn't matter. That does not help your partner move on from their hurt. It may be true, but it's ineffective. So you can remind yourself that your actions did not arise from a place of evil or maliciousness. And that may be helpful for you so that you can separate your behavior from who you are as a person. Just maybe don't tell your partner. Don't talk to your partner about that part of it. Do that for yourself to help yourself inoculate yourself from the pull of defensiveness, from the pull of rationalizing, from the pull of explaining. Just keep it in your head. Inside thought, not outside words. It can be so helpful if your partner is able to offer you a little bit of verbal validation and a little bit of grace here. We want to be careful not to ask your partner to do the emotional labor of comforting you while they themselves are hurting so badly. But if your partner is able to offer you any version of a kind word, yes, I'm hurt, but I know you didn't mean it. Yes, I'm hurting, but I can see that you're hurting too. If that happens, if any version of that happens, please take it. Please make sure you let yourself kind of land your partner's words inside of you. It's quite generous for them to offer this to you. And I want you to use their grace as fuel, to fuel your ability to access that sense of worthiness and resilience inside of you, because you're going to need it. You're going to need it to step into a relational repair. Okay, strategy number 5 is to cue your body. Shame, like all emotions, is embodied. It lives in your body. Somatic researcher and clinician Dr. Peter Levine says, quote, when a person is in a posture of shame, the shame aspect will continue until you've changed the posture, end quote. So it's not like when I'm done feeling shame, my shoulders will roll back and my gaze will go upward. It's like as my shoulders roll back and as my gaze goes upward, I feel less shame. That arrow, I think it's easy for us to forget that the arrow goes in that direction. Change the body, change the emotion. Begin with movement. See what happens if you straighten your spine, roll your shoulders back, tilt your chest forward a little. What other movements might your body want or need to become a little less attached to that shame? Perhaps some rocking or swaying. What shifts for you as you put your feet on the earth? What other body-based things could you do? Meditation, exercise, a shower, some yoga, drinking some water, doing some art, listening to some music, dancing it out. Coming back into your body will help you move from the collapse and the stuckness of shame into the action orientation of guilt so that you can do the next right thing, which is make yourself available for repair. Number 6, tap into pride. which seems a little bit paradoxical in this moment, right? We're talking about how you did something that you wish you hadn't done or something that your partner wishes you hadn't done. And now I'm sitting here like, maybe feel proud. But here's why. I want you to see if you can tap into some pride. Who do you want to be in this moment? How do you want to feel when you look back on this experience? This is an opportunity. How you meet this moment of repair matters. And meeting this moment of repair with an open heart and a calm body sets you up to feel proud of yourself. It sets you up to blend the painful experience of the thing you did with that sense of pride for what you did after. And that counts. It doesn't negate it because you still did the thing, but it counts. It matters. The repair matters, and you deserve to feel proud of how you show up for the repair. So remind yourself of the strengths that you bring into the relationship. Remind yourself of the strengths of this relationship. Maybe look through some photos, some mementos, something that helps you remember that you're more than your worst behavior, something that reminds you that your relationship with this person is more than this painful moment. As you look through the memories, trust that that core of love and fondness is still there. It's covered up right now with hurt, but it may still be there. I hope it's still there. And as you repair with a kind of maturity, it shows that you believe in that core. You're sort of carrying the hope for the relationship. And you're maximizing the chances of returning to that place where you can once again nurture and grow that core of love and of friendship. The last thing that I want to talk to you about before I let you go for the week is how to make a heartfelt apology. So we know that self-regulation lays the foundation for relational repair. We know that you have to move yourself from shame and into guilt so that you can reach for your partner and so that you can reach for them in a way that has any hope of making a positive impact. But take a moment and reflect on what you saw when you were growing up in terms of apologies. Did you see your parents apologize to each other or apologize to the key people in their life if your parents were single? Did your parents apologize to you? Lots of us grew up in houses where parents forced us to apologize, and we therefore learned to pair or to equate apology with punishment, apology with loss of control, apology with loss of sovereignty. If that was the case, if you grew up in a home with forced apologies, you perhaps never learned the power of an apology to offer healing to the other person while liberating us from shame and from guilt. So let's talk about how you can make a kick-ass apology that is heartfelt, that owns your responsibility, and that centers the other person's feelings. I think this is a great place to write out what you want to say in advance, to practice maybe even how you want to say it before you approach your partner. To me, this makes you planful, not awkward or rigid. Here are the things I want you to keep in mind. First, you have to take responsibility. This is a key ingredient to a heartfelt apology, is taking responsibility. Clearly state what you did that was harmful to your partner, free of any stories or justifications. I betrayed your trust. I lied to you. My behavior was selfish. I was thoughtless. I didn't think about the impact that my behavior would have on you, and that wasn't fair. So remember, this is not you beating yourself up. It's not you centering your shame. You've already dealt with your shame before you come into this conversation. Now this is about your partner. If you make it about yourself here, you're going to once again risk putting them into a position where they feel like they have to take care of you. And that's why it's so important to come to the apology after you've done some self-work and you've attended to your own needs, restored a modicum of your sense of self. A heartfelt apology has to happen from a platform of self-worth. Number 2, name the impact. So first, let's take responsibility. Second, name the impact. What I did hurt you. My action made it so that we lost the trust we had worked so hard to build up. I put you in a spot where you are now doubting us and reconsidering our future. What I did was not fair to you. Bear witness. Ask them to talk to you about how they're feeling. Can you tell me about your experience? Can you tell me more about how you're feeling? This portion is, again, only about them. Work really hard not to challenge or deny their feelings or their experiences, even if they feel confusing to you, even if there's a part of you that's like, wow, I wouldn't be feeling this way if I was in their shoes. Doesn't matter. What they're reporting to you is how they feel in their shoes. And your job is to bear witness to it. Keep your gaze on them, nod, keep breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth. Avoid if statements. I'm sorry if I hurt you. Nope. No need to say the if. You know that your actions did hurt them. Avoid but. But just negates everything that came before. I'm sorry, but I didn't mean it. I'm sorry, but it wasn't my fault. I'm sorry, but he came on to me first. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Just drop the but. Avoid passive voice. This kind of goes along with the if. I'm sorry if you were offended, right? That again, it's like just the sneaky way of kind of letting yourself off the hook. You were offended, right? I'm sorry. You were offended. Avoid cross-complaining. Well, I've been feeling neglected because you are traveling so much for work. Well, you never do X or Y or Z in our relationship. This conversation, this heartfelt apology conversation, does not have to be the totality of the entire conversation about this incident. You could come back later and say something like, are you available to hear a bit more about my experience or my perspective? But right now, the focus is on them. My friend Terry Real says that offering a heartfelt apology is like standing there at a customer service window. A customer service window doesn't go in both, the interaction doesn't go in both directions, right? When you are the customer service representative, you are there only to serve the concern of the customer in front of you. When you are offering a heartfelt apology, you are only in service of your partner's experience. That does not mean that your experience never matters or that your experience doesn't matter. But I will tell you that if you're able to offer a heartfelt apology at time one, you are setting the stage, you are opening the door for the possibility that at time two, your partner can be open and available to hearing about your perspective, your experience, the wider elements of context that primed you to behave in the way that you did. But that's not ever going to happen until and unless at time one, you do the customer service window heartfelt apology. Okay. And then finally, I want to invite you to offer to make a repair. Something like, I wonder if this would help. Try to come up with some concrete actions that you could engage in or that the two of you could engage in. And the reason I want you to come to the table with a few suggestions, here's what I think might help us, is that when somebody's hurt and what you say to them is, what do you need? That can feel, again, like you're asking them to do emotional labor. You're asking them to work hard. Whereas if you come to the table, come into this conversation with some suggestions, I wonder if it might help for me to work from home for the next few weeks. I wonder if it might help for me to share my passwords with you. I wonder if it might help. I remember being at a workshop many, many, many years ago about infidelity, where David Treadway was teaching the workshop. And he said that he had a couple where a husband cheated on a wife. And he said, I wonder if it would help as an amends action for me to give up whiskey for a year. And he was, I guess, a man who liked whiskey. So it was a way of saying, I will take something out of my life that I enjoy, that matters to me, as a way of demonstrating to you my contrition. And certainly this is not like a one-to-one correspondence, but in this workshop, David Treadway was explaining that that gesture had meaning for the wife, that it showed that he was willing to walk his talk, that he was willing to kind of extend himself for the sake of the repair of the relationship. So when you suggest an amends action or something, a concrete thing that you could do or that the two of you could do, it might not land. It's just you taking a risk. It's just you kind of floating it and seeing where it goes. It might not land. That doesn't matter. The thing you suggest might not be what they're wanting or needing, but in proposing an amends action of some kind, what you're doing is showing that you understand that the best apology is changed behavior. You're being action-oriented, and that matters, even if the thing you suggest doesn't end up being ultimately the thing that you guys do. Okay? We did it. We're at the end of our conversation. I want to thank you for joining me today for this really challenging, really important topic. Shame is not an easy emotion for us to identify, for us to manage, and repairing from harm is not easy either. I hope this discussion helps remind you of the power of self-compassion, the power of compassion, the power of self-awareness. You are capable of growth and healing. And if you respond to your growing edges in moments of conflict with that commitment to empowerment, then these moments have the power to actually strengthen your relationship with your partner and your relationship with yourself. If you are already a newsletter subscriber, you're going to find this episode's companion worksheet in the next few weeks worth of newsletters. Otherwise, go to dralexandrasolomon.com/repair and you can access the worksheet there. And make sure that you also check out the additional resources that I have linked in the show notes. And until next time, be well. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.